I want to actually address a couple of things. One is kind of particularity of Islamophobia today, and then the other is putting that in the context of the history of oppression and exploitation in the United States. Because while Islamophobia is a particular form, I don't think that it is unique. I don't think it is something that's separate and apart from everything else that's going on, or even what's going on today. Now, after 9/11, George W. Bush, in his speech, said, "I also want to speak tonight directly to Muslims throughout the world. We respect your faith. It's practiced freely by many millions of Americans and by millions more in countries that America counts as friends. Its teachings are good and peaceful, and those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah. The terrorists are traitors to their own faith, trying in effect to hijack Islam itself. The enemy of America is not our many Muslim friends, it is not our many Arab friends." Now, I think that's important that he actually said that, because frankly, 50 years ago, a president wouldn't feel the need to say that. And it represents some progress and development in what's going on. The government now at least has to pay some lip service to the idea that we are not opposed to Islam itself, but only to particular individuals. Now that is, of course, in contrast to much else that the government does and says. So there is this sort of veneer, at least, of respect that is contradicted by the actions. For instance, right after 9/11, at least 70 men, all of them but one were Muslims, were held as material witnesses. Now, the material witness statute says you can actually hold somebody even though you're not accusing that person of any kind of crime, because you're afraid you may leave before you can get testimony. 1/3 were held for at least 2 months, several for more than 6 months, one for over a year. Half of them were never required to even testify before a grand jury. 1,200 people were arrested after 9/11. Of those, something like 10 to 15 were even suspected of having links to Al-Qaeda. There was a Pakistani gas station attendant who was a few minutes behind Muhammad Atta in a line to renew his driver's license. He was arrested, detained. That's an interesting term, by the way, detained. I think of detained as like I have to go somewhere and I get a phone call, and I get there late because I was detained by the phone call. We have detained people in Guantanamo for like 8 years now. That's supposed to be more than being detained, but that's an aside. Anyway, he was held and denied bail by a judge for the only reason being he was related to Atta because he was a few minutes behind him in line. Sami al-Arian, professor in Florida, was prosecuted. Government couldn't convict him. Had a trial, they weren't able to convict him. Held him for a couple of years. He was ultimately, made a deal, copped a plea for 6 months. The government broke that deal and held him after that time, and decided to prosecute him in another jurisdiction. There was Tariq Ramadan was supposed to come to an endowed chair at Notre Dame University, and had a visa. It was revoked. And I would note, by the way, because when I was preparing this, if you Google Tariq Ramadan, a renowned Muslim scholar, the first 2 hits you get are from Campus Watch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a avowedly racist organization. And that is of concern because that shows how many people are actually looking at this stuff. Yeah. Okay, more recently, we've seen the constitutional amendment in Oklahoma, which says, and this goes to something else. It says that judges in Oklahoma cannot use international cases from other jurisdictions outside the United States for making any of their rulings, and specifically cannot use Sharia law. Yeah, and which is sort of interesting if you think of the Declaration of Independence. What did the founding fathers say at that time? Is we have to explain ourselves out of a respect for the opinions of other people. The state of Oklahoma has decided we have no respect for the opinions of other people generally, and we absolutely have no respect for Muslim law. Yeah, which of course, when you consider if there are Muslims who are getting divorced, something about their heritage and law has to be a part of any legal decision. Park 51, of course, everyone knows about the so-called Ground Zero Mosque, which, aside from the fact that it wasn't a mosque and wasn't Ground Zero, was a perfect name for it. But aside from that, all across the country, way away from Ground Zero, there's opposition to building mosques. Mm-hmm. So, and we hear this sort of general rationalization. Not all Muslims are responsible for 9/11, but all those who are responsible for 9/11 are Muslims. Now, one could just as easily say, not all Christians bomb women's clinics, but everyone who bombed the women's clinic is a Christian. So why are we not hostile to all Christians? So that at least is the background that I see in terms of what's going on today, and the sort of contradiction between what the government says on one hand and what it does on the other hand. While it's kind of this plausible denial about, we talk about how we allied with Muslim, and President Obama wishes them well on Ramadan and all of that, but the actions contradict that very clearly. And that creates the conditions for the people of the United States to become more and more hostile to anyone who appears different.